Hey everyone, it's HappyChimeNoises. Today we're looking at a new Graves build that is theoretically the best Graves build and should be taking over the meta soon. This is a Master Graves main who's also known as rFreezy. He has a YouTube channel, and for a while now he's been testing this Goredrinker Graves build that turns him from what is usually an assassin with crit items that one-shots people into more of a long fight bruiser champion that can be a frontline, as well as having Black Cleaver shredding armor. This is a much more 1v9 build that can take front-to-back team fights rather than the assassin build, which relies on you surprising enemies. So we're going to look at one of his games. This is his second account, which I think is around the same rank. Nothing really special happening early on. Starts red smite, does the usual clear, full clear most likely on Graves. He starts red without a leash. In this case he doesn't need it, since Graves can continuously stack his E passive. Right now he's got 6 stacks of True Grit. You can see the resistances he's getting already. He takes no damage from these jungle camps. So for a long time we had 80 carry Graves, and then after that was reworked, the build became Bruiser Graves, and he was Bruiser Graves for multiple seasons. And then eventually, as the damage in the game increased, Riot turned Graves into more of the bursty champion we know him as now. But the goal of this Goredrinker build is to take him back to this like season 5, 6, and 7 roughly, where he was still a jungler, but instead of focusing on like surprising enemies, trying to one-shot people before they one-shot you, more of this skilled gameplay where you're fully focused on extending fights and outplaying people over a longer period, using the stats that you're able to generate with this one single E ability. He gains a stack every time he dashes, or even 2 stacks if he dashes towards an enemy champion. These grant armor and get refreshed when he hits something. Early on, Graves not too bad at fighting. He's very outnumbered in this situation, so he's definitely not going to get this crab. But Poppy seems to be letting him go for this top lane gank, actually against a Rioter. Playing Gwen, how disgusting. He actually has Ignite in this game, by the way. He prefers to play with Ignite instead of Flash. So since it's such a bruiser playstyle, he always has his E on cooldown. As you might notice, lots of the items he buys Goredrinker, he buys Death Dance, he buys Black Cleaver. I think all of those have ability haste on. And so with this ability, when it's maxed, it already has a pretty low cooldown. It goes down to 11 seconds maxed, and then he gets, I think, around 60 ability haste. And so that goes way down, and it's also decreased when he auto attacks. So basically this doesn't have a cooldown. He can choose where he wants to be in the fight. And he also always has ult to reposition if he needs it, so the flash isn't quite as necessary as the ignite, which helps him get the early game leads. You also notice he's got fleet footwork in this game. It's good for early game, it's good for his clear. You noticed he basically took no damage from the full clear, got to level 4 really quickly. He's now also bought Iron Spike Whip. I believe there's a special interaction with Graves auto attack and Iron Spike Whip. You can reload while using it. I think that might be partially it. So Graves is he's maximizing his clearing speed, I guess, with this item. Graves really doesn't need it to clear, but it does speed up your clear, and ever since the item changes, Graves has actually been struggling a bit. I think maybe with some jungle changes as well that made it even worse this season. I think the crab changes weren't great for him. But you can see how ridiculously fast he's clearing this jungle. He's almost keeping up with solo lanes. So yeah, fleet footwork on Graves, great for clearing, but it's also great for team fighting, because you want to be stacking your Black Cleaver, you want to be stacking your E, and so the longer the fight, the better. And thus, fleet footwork you can proc a few times in the fight. Make sure you're staying topped up on health. And it gives you a lot more value than something you can maybe only use once, like maybe Electrocute has a bit of a long cooldown, so you wouldn't be able to use it many times. But Graves, you can see absolutely destroying this Poppy in the farm. Still weaving in the quick active Iron Spike whenever he can. I think the Ignite is pretty smart. Graves isn't the strongest early game champion in terms of ganks because he has no CC. And so Ignite lets him get through early game and still collect some kills if he ever goes for them. It pretty much sets him up to 1v1 any laner. And when you're playing jungle, the best thing you can do is 1v1 the enemy laner. You don't really want to be relying on your laner to have to kill someone. If you can walk into a lane, burst someone, ignite them, and they're dead, and your top laner doesn't have to do anything, there's no risk of it getting turned around, or even counter-ganked really, because you can kill someone before the enemy jungle can show up. So this just helps with that. Buys some more damage, still no boots. You can see he's probably just going to do another rotation of camps actually. As long as he's out farming Poppy, he pretty much wins this game, because Poppy can't outscale him, and she also can't farm as fast as him. So the advantage this Graves has is that he can just kill his buffs and kill his camps over and over again. The build is reasonably expensive. Lethality is obviously much cheaper. That's one of the reasons why it's so good. lethality doesn't cost as much, the stats aren't quite as good, the scaling's not as good, but you get the really good mid game. Whereas this build, it costs a lot more, but since it's Graves, you can be farming a lot anyway. And so late game, you're going to be a lot more powerful. League is all about one-shotting people before they one-shot you, and this build makes sure you're not going to get one-shot. Wow, he actually gets this kill, right? He does. The Ignite again. I think he'd have missed 2 kills maybe, with Ignite not being up. Or if he took Flash. This game is a good one. I had a quick scrub through just to make sure there were some team fights, and there are some really good fights in this one, which really show off the power of the build, so it's going to be an interesting mid and late game. It's a pretty dominating jungle pick already, just being able to start this whenever he wants. He still has Fleet, so he's not really going to lose any health from this. He's losing mid prio, so it's a bit more risky. He's never really in danger of dying for this. If Poppy started this and Graves showed up, Poppy would die. She's 2 levels down already. And he's pretty much got no camps up. This looks pretty good for Graves' team. Rift goes down even for Graves. Ooh, no kill. And that guy gets out. And the top laner picks up Eye of Herald. Oh, that's not something you want to see. So Goredrinker has been picked up. He's even got plated steel caps. He did actually steal this dragon. The jungle diff in this game is pretty massive already. I don't know if it's champion based or player based, but that should not have happened. So ignoring that, the benefits of Goredrinker that we're seeing, it's got AD, so that's always good for Graves. He loves flat AD. It's got health, which is something he normally doesn't really get too much of. He's able to use that really well with the Omnivamp on this item. Auto attacks combined with the Fleet. He's getting a surprising amount of basically lifesteal from this. Picks up another assist. Really good. The top laner even dropped Rift mid. What a nice guy. And then you also have the active, of course, which can be very useful in some games. As a ranged DPSing champion, if you get jumped on, that can be how you die. And so if someone's jumping on you and you can use Goredrinker in a group of them, you're not going to die. I wouldn't say this build is super weak early game, but it definitely power spikes once you get a couple or a few items. He's not in a position where he's really tanky at the moment. His items don't have too much synergy. You can see him getting shut down. If he had probably Black Cleaver here at the same time, he would maybe even 1v2 this. A few people up here. Shaco playing like Shaco should, baiting a bit too much. The Goredrinker hit there you saw. Unfortunately, he is against the Season 12 champion, so I'm not sure if this will work out. Oh, it actually does. Wow, that's ridiculous he managed to stay alive in that spot. The amount of health that he has as a bonus that kept him alive there is crazy. I think he also managed to get 2 Goredrinker procs. 15-second cooldown that's also reduced by ability haste. This thing's going to be up like every 10 seconds. This fight's still going, Graves is back to full. Of course he can always smite any camp that he needs to get back some more health as well. You notice he doesn't have any E stacks, dashes forwards to get Goredrinker. Yeah, the problem in this situation was that he wasn't able to stack his E up at all, and so he was much more squishy than he thinks he is. He does manage to pick up Black Cleaver though. This Graves build is great as long as you're able to get your E stacked ready for a fight, and you see the stacks up here, the True Grit. If you can get them stacked, you get so much more resistance than normal Graves would ever have. I mean, you can see here it's already stacking up. He's currently got 40 bonus, I believe, just from it, and then there it is, it's gone. He got 20 bonus, and he lost the 20 because he lost the stacks. So Graves currently full health, manages to get that kill. He kills the Shaco clone himself. There's pretty much no threat on Graves dying in this fight right now. The amount of health he has, Zoe can't get through it. And he's still putting out reasonable damage. If you think about the risks that are in this game, like a Renata ult against a one-shotting lethality Graves, if this guy was anywhere near Zeri would just be dead in the fight. Whereas, since your damage is well spread out, it's actually probably better against Renata. You can't immediately kill one of your teammates when she ults you. And same thing, since he's against a lot of damage, CC here, someone you have to be melee tanking here, this build will work a lot better against this team comp. So it might be the case that in some team comps it's better to build the lethality build if you need to go for one-shots. Whereas in this case, he's against lots of champions that he has to skirmish against. And so maybe he needs to be more melee, get more stacks, get more armor. It's always going to be better against a full AD team, right? Because this gives armor, it doesn't give magic resist. In terms of if this build is like really, really good, The normal Graves build definitely isn't really good, and so I think that, oh, he got his Rift Herald stolen. I think that anything to help Graves is probably a good idea, because this champion hasn't been very good. I don't think for the past 2 seasons even, since the item rework, he's been playable, especially not this season. I personally wasn't too much of a fan of this build actually, like the old Bruiser build. I kind of like the one-shotting build, just because it's so good to be a one-shotter in solo queue. If you're playing against lower ranked players trying to climb, like I would do at the start of the season, one-shotting them's just super fun, you know? Back to base, this game he picks up Goredrinker. This replay was with the Death Stance changes. He likes building Goredrinker against AP damage, and he still prefers Death Stance just against AD, I assume. Personally, I would say that probably Death Stance is better. He's gonna get it after this anyway, I'm pretty sure. He just buys one first if it's more relevant than the other one. Because Death Stance now working against both AD and AP damage. He's still farming. This is what you always should be doing as Graves, as long as the fight hasn't finished yet. So Graves getting poppy ulted again. He seems doing well though. He can dash just straight into the back line. No risk whatsoever. He takes around, how much is that? 200 damage? 300 damage from Jinx from face tanking her for a couple seconds. And that's even with Goredrinker instead of Death Stance. Imagine how much resistance he would have. Gwen's pushing bot lane. Shouldn't actually lose this. Is Gwen gonna be... Is she gonna be Gwen and still win this? So against Hullbreaker set, he gets out of this, doesn't he? So pretty much soloing Baron this Graves right now. He's lifestealing the whole time. Took absolutely no damage from that Zoe Q. Baron's reset, I don't think they can finish this. Pretty ridiculous he's even trying, but it shows how tanky he is. The Zoe was doing nothing to him in that fight, it was all just the Baron damage going through his health bar. And even that only managed to get him to under 1,000. Resetting, he actually buys more, which I really think is incorrect, like pretty much all the time. In this case, he might as well go Death Stance. I mean, you saw how little damage Zoe was doing to him. Zoe has Everfrost, a single Seeker's Arm Guard, no penetration whatsoever. It's not super worth worrying about her, maybe for Gwen. But I think this item's still pretty trash. I mean, in every fight, he's just killing Jinx. People are still alive. He's going for this dragon, though. This fight is not really even won, and he's going for this. Gwen is definitely the main issue. It's the Rioter versus our more off-meta player. I think we know what side everyone's on. Does anyone really want a Rioter picking Gwen to win this game? So he's here again, going for a one-shot. He's not dying to this. Around here is where Flash would start to get like quite difficult to not have. Theoretically, you are a frontliner for these fights, and you don't really want to be flashing in to look for picks. I think you would use Flash is more for repositioning if your team's not following you, or you need to dodge something, you need to dodge a very important CC. So he's just picking up the Chain Vest, going into the Death Stance like we thought. I mean, he's kind of getting griefed by his top laner right now. I don't know where this guy's going. Should be okay though. He's getting engaged on. Alright, how's this 1v1 gonna go? It's not gonna be 1v1. The anti-heal paying off. Gwen cannot out-heal this, definitely. And the enemies have peeled off Baron, so it's not that bad. They might lose a couple people. I think they lost Shaco Clone, unfortunately. One man down, but everything else is pretty fine. Alright, keep an eye on his stacks when he gets them for this fight. It's the only thing that really matters for him. If he gets stacks, he can face tank multiple people. If he doesn't, he can still get one shot. Luckily there aren't too many threats on the other team. Not loving the fact he has no control wards at this point. I mean, you can see how much it's hurting them already. The enemies know that there's Baron starting. The Chain Vest, it's hard to know if it was a mistake or not, probably. At least they do have a control ward. It's not really his support's responsibility though. How good is he at smiting? He's not good at smiting, guys. He's not taking any damage from this fight though, so they can maybe still take it. Dashes up. He's got full stacks, I think, of True Grit, so he's incredibly tanky. He does basically kill this area with his damage. Good ult though to finish off one kill. His E is off cooldown, but there are traps. He can't really chase it, unlucky. Yeah, pretty terrible smite, unfortunately. It was a 50-50 though. Decides to farm this instead of going back. It's the classic trade raptors for base moment. I'm sure this guy knows he has these problems. But I guess he's just showing the importance of farming on Graves. The anti-heal is very important here. If he didn't have it, then this could go either way. The one problem he is having is mana. He mentioned he would take, is it Coup de Grâce, the mana rune that you can get for team fights, where if you get a kill, you get mana back. He mentioned that was a good idea. I think I agree with that. I believe it's instead of Triumph, and I don't see how you really need Triumph. You have enough health regen, right? Like how little mana he has in this fight. Not sure. Oh, he's actually killing his AD carry again. I love Renata's ult. It's such a funny idea. So if he wants to play this fight, he probably needs to get some autos on Dragon. His team are doing well though. Graves, you're gonna help your teammates. He seems incredibly worried about Gwen. Don't you lose another smite fight. Good boy. The Goredrinker right there. Not bad. Not a very well played fight. He really didn't contribute a single thing except killing the jungler before Baron went down, or before Dragon went down. Potentially not playing up to his master rank or above. We might not be seeing the best this build can offer. I imagine that Tarzan, who is pretty much known for this build in Challenger, hitting rank 1 with it, or the similar Bruiser Graves build, he'd probably be the best person to watch for this. Inhib goes down, or 29 minutes in. They did actually get the Dragon Soul as well. Baron not up for a while, but Gwen is pushing bot lane still. A level 18 Gwen versus level 18 Graves. This should be telling. He has the Ignite as well. He's actually sold his anti-healing. I mean, it's a fair point. Why did he bother buying anti-healing when he only needs to anti-heal one person and he has Ignite in his build? I don't think he needed it. I think he needed to ignite Gwen in that fight. I don't know if it was up, but it was a bit risky not using it. So we got a 28-second death timer on this guy. It's not going to be enough to end the game. Can they get a pick? Of course this build is not known for getting picks. So you're slightly limiting your options in later game. You are a teamfight champion at this point, right? You're not playing to one-shot someone. You don't have an Eclipse. If you fight in this Zoe, she probably will die. But it's not going to be instant. Fight going down mid. Can you get there in time? Mobility is fine. Let's see how many stacks he can get on his E. Starting off good. Trying to kill his AD carry again. The enemies do not really have a front line. His Ignite is up, by the way. He needs to use it. There it is. Gwen cannot win this because of the Ignite. Good work. Probably Shaco also used his. And there's the game. He didn't have too much of a challenge in this game, I would say. Obviously didn't play completely optimally. His pathing was fine. His build, he clearly swapped around a bit. I don't love them all, but I think this is a pretty good build if you stop the Goredrinker. You can go Guardian Angel last. I think it's really good. If you want the runes, then here they are. I would recommend maybe swapping out Triumph for the mana rune instead. He is going for this Magical Footwear Cosmic Insight build. It's interesting. I guess it does fit with his style, right? Because he doesn't want to buy boots early, and he does want more cooldown reduction for fights, the Goredrinker. I think maybe Cosmic Insight is a little bit of a waste of a rune, but it's okay with Goredrinker for sure. Overall, I'd say this build's pretty good. I like it. I think that it's definitely a viable angle. I think that against many team comps, this is going to be much better, especially if you're playing versus a tank or something. Eclipse is okay, but you're not going to kill them. Whereas being a frontliner with Black Cleaver, you're going to be super useful in basically any fight. Death Stance is probably OP at the moment. I like it a lot. Goredrinker is definitely not what it used to be. It's been nerfed and it's pretty much not the meta anymore. Hullbreaker is now the meta top lane. I think definitely if this build was being picked at the start of last season, it would be super broken just because Goredrinker was broken. You could probably play any champion with this back then. But I like it. I'd recommend trying it. If you can get used to the E stacking, it's just like playing old League. And so that's quite cool that there's a build that lets you try an old style again. I think Riot should do stuff like this more often, where you're able to still play something that you played in the past, and still have the option to play the new one if that's what you really like. Thanks for watching, and make sure you subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this.